to Free Media. I'm Amber Duke.
And I'm Robby Soave. Well, Mark Zuckerberg revealed on the Joe Rogan podcast what I knew for years, that the Biden administration was directly pressuring Meta into censorship. Let's watch.
These people from the Biden administration would call up our team and like scream at them and curse, and it's like these documents it's all kind of out there.
Did you record any of those phone calls?
I don't think we but I think
I want to listen.
I mean, there are emails. the emails are published. It's all kind of out there, and they're like, and basically it just got to this point where we were like, no, we're not gonna take down things that are true. That's ridiculous. They wanted us to take down this meme of Leonardo DiCaprio looking at a TV talking about how 10 years from now or something, you're going to see an ad that says, okay, if you took a COVID vaccine, you're eligible for, for this kind of payment, like this sort of like class action lawsuit type meme. And they're like, no, you have to take that down. And we just said, no, we're not going to take down humor and satire. We're not going to take down things that are true. And then at some point, I guess, I don't know, it flipped a bit. I mean, Biden, when he gave some statement at some point, I don't know if it was a press conference or to some journalists, where he basically was like, these guys are killing people. And I don't know, then like all these different agencies and branches of government basically just like started investigating and coming after our company. It was brutal. It was brutal.
Wow.
So longtime readers, viewers, listeners of me and of you already know this, because I have published emails from between the CDC and Mark Zuckerberg that were obtained not by me, but by the civil liberties law firm that brought that lawsuit against the CDC. I've written about it. You've written about it. They are quite troubling, quite disturbing, but it is still good to hear Mark Zuckerberg fully aware of the timeline and what took place. And it is the case, as was the case with Twitter, that actually when you read the emails, there was resistance at first from moderators at the company. They were like, what is the government talking about? I don't think we want to take this down. That was a great example that included clearly protected speech, clearly satire, clearly the sort of thing that the government should not be telling the company to take down. They were still going after that kind of stuff. And then the threats from the government got so explicit, I know exactly when it was. It was the summer, I think it was July or August, somewhere around there, of 2021. Joe Biden, I think right before he was going to get into Air Force One, said, Facebook is killing people. They're killing people because they're not taking down more vaccine skeptical content. And that was a turning point. They were afraid. They were explicitly being threatened with regulation. And I think this is a cautionary tale. And there was a lot of, I would argue, somewhat misguided frustration about the censorship at Mark Zuckerberg when we should have been focused on what the government was doing.
I think that's mostly fair, although I do wish that Mark Zuckerberg had exercised some courage in the face of this potential government crackdown. I mean, there's plenty of criticisms to be had of Elon Musk, but when he talks about trying to turn Twitter into a free speech platform and resisting government influence, I think he's very sincere about that, and he's done a lot of these things at great personal and professional cost.
But it took him a while to get there, though, right?
It did,
He was not always this person. I think Zuckerberg could be there soon, too.
He could. I mean, some of the things that he has said in recent podcasts have been very heartening. I know we talked about this last week, using the phrase legacy media. I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this guy?
Yeah.
I love him.
I mean, I also think I think from his perspective as the head of a gigantic business that, he has to be responsive to shareholders. He has to do what is profit maximizing for the company. I think he might have worried that no one was going to defend him and that he had to be in good with the administration because he had already made so many conservatives and so many Republicans mad that if he went out and I would have cheered him doing a full Atlas Shrugged kind of, I'm going on intellectual strike and we're not complying with the government. I would have applauded that. I think he might not have had enough allies on the right to really bolster him through that. This time it would be different, I think, now if it happened again.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I wish would have happened is like if he had come forward during the Murthy v. Biden court case and testified or written an amicus brief supporting the claims about government censorship. in relation to social media posts about COVID, it could have been so powerful, and it could have potentially changed the outcome of that case, because you had Justice Samuel Alito, when the case went to the Supreme Court, saying there was an implicit threat from the government of regulation just because they have their finger on this button they can push at practically any time. But to the other justices who chose not to grant the plaintiffs in the case their claims, they basically hid under the shroud of, well, there's not enough evidence to prove an explicit threat from the government. And if Zuckerberg was able to testify to these screaming, yelling phone calls and the explicit threats that were being made to employees, it could have really made a huge difference. And now I'm worried we won't get another strike at this ability to hold the government accountable for its sort of roundabout way of doing censorship.
I saw Tim Miller of The Bulwark tweet that this was a possibly made-up story. And I'm like, but we've seen the emails. Like, I've
Possibly
published the
made up.
emails. It's the story is certainly not made up. I've read emails of Rob Flaherty, a communications staffer in Biden's White House, screaming via email at Zuckerberg moderator people for not taking down more COVID stuff. So it's like, what part of this do you think is made up? We can read the emails.
And you have people that worked on the DHS intern squad that was responsible for flagging posts. One of them wrote an article for the Free Press talking about the things she was instructed to flag for social media companies. And I don't know if you saw Jim Acosta's rant about this, but he actually argued, as a member of the so-called Free Press, that the government should be taking down COVID misinformation, and it's actually their job to do so. I mean, I can't imagine being someone whose job is protected by the First Amendment and trying to get rid of the other First Amendment protections for regular Americans. It's quite sick ivory tower bullshit, pardon my French.
Very much so. Well, you and I are both happy to see Mark Zuckerberg growing a little bit of a spine here, and I think increasingly a lot of tech leaders, business people have realized that there's so much unfriendliness toward their free speech rights, to how their business operates in the European Union, obviously in China, in South America, every other corner of the globe. But America has the First Amendment, which really allows them to do business. And despite this really appalling government overreach, we're still in better shape for our companies and for the tech sector here. And I think there's a more of a recognition of that now that these other countries have done, bureaucrats in Brazil, for instance, or in the EU, have done so much dramatic overreach on behalf, with misinformation, policing misinformation as their convenient scapegoat over and over again. I think they, like you and I, have a hair trigger for the word misinformation. They know what that means. That means some bureaucrat, regulator person is trying to hamper your company because they don't like your opinion.
That's right.
Tune in to more free media right after this.